here at Function Points. With me today in the co-pilot seat is Thomas, one of our lovely support analysts. So any sort of questions that come up throughout the course of this, folks, please feel free to throw those into the question area. Either Thomas or myself will address those throughout the course of this webinar, or if it's something that's a little bit deeper that maybe we need to touch base with you on, one of our customer success managers or the support team will be reaching out to you individually. So rest assured, your questions will get answered. If they're not answered directly in this webinar today, then we'll make sure that somebody reaches out and we're able to address those. Okay, folks, so a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. This is back to basics. So really what we're going to be going through here are a bit of basic navigation. We're going to take a look at dashboards within the Function Point system, and then we're going to be focusing on time tracking. So even though this is a back to basics session, there will be a few areas that we might dive possibly a little bit deeper into. Certainly, if you do have any questions around any of these pieces, again, feel free to speak up throughout the course of the webinar, throw that question in, and we'll see what we can do to get you an answer. All right, now without further ado, folks, I'm just going to shut this slide down for a moment and pull up a demo system, and we're going to jump into some basic navigation. All right. Now, when we first log into our Function Point system, this is generally going to be the screen that we see. Now, this is known as our classic dashboard, and it really contains all the information that the majority of users getting into Function Point will need to be able to use the system. Just taking a look at our main screen here, we can see we've got 4 separate panels that are showing us various bits of information. Our pin notes section, which is going to contain any sort of notes that we've been tagged in as users. Our task and to-dos panel, which is giving us our action list for the day, for the week, or if we're acting more as a traffic manager, tasks that we have decided to push out to other people within our organization. We have our jobs list, which is outlining either all of the work in the system or work that we are specifically keeping an eye on. And last but not least, our timesheet section, which is letting us track time to the various pieces of work that we touch throughout the course of the day. Now, along the top of the screen, we have what's known as the navigation bar. This contains all of the different modules within the Function Point system. Now, what we'll notice is that most of these have a very similar setup. If I hover over top of schedules, for instance, I can see find, view, and add. In my companies and contacts area, I have the same sort of drop-down pieces. Same thing with estimates, jobs, and projects. Now, one thing that continually comes up with our success team, when people are first getting used to the system, they'll take a look at these modules, they'll hover over top of view, and they won't necessarily see what they expect to see in this view area. Now, it's a really important point to make here. With this view area, we're really only seeing items that we've recently viewed. So if you're just getting into the system for the first time, or possibly you're a new employee, and you've just logged in for the first time, these view areas are going to be blank for you. You're not going to see anything until you start navigating through the system. Once you do start navigating through the system, these view areas will populate based on where you've been. Perfect example of this, if I was working on an estimate, possibly the last estimate was this 30375, I'd walked away from my desk, and I'd come back, logged back into Function Point. If I wanted to call that up quickly, I can just hover over top of this estimates module. I can move down to view estimate, and chances are it's going to be one of the last ones that I was looking at. So nice quick way for us to get back to what we were looking for in the system. Let's actually click through to this one. Take a look at our services here. So I've been building this estimate out. And again, I've had to walk away from my desk. I've come back, taken a look at my view option. I've selected that estimate, and I'm able to get back at the work that I was currently working on. Now, another really important point to make in the system is that if we ever are quite deep into some of our work and we just need to get back to that starting point, the quickest way for us to do so is just clicking our company logo or this function point logo on the top left part of our screen. If I'm clicking this, this will just immediately take me back to that first dashboard that I was looking at. Now, slightly more of an advanced tip, but something that is useful nevertheless, this quick search field. If I didn't want to use these view options here, I can actually use this quick search, and I should be able to pull up different parts of the system based on different criteria that I enter here. So in this case, I know this is called testing. If I was to pop into my quick search and type in testing, I can move over to this within piece, select estimates, and this will pull me up a short list that has that job that I was currently working on. A few more other useful tips, I guess, just in terms of basic navigation, are these pieces up here. Now this bell icon, this is going to represent any sort of in-system alerts that we might get. So once we have alerts turned on within function points, we have the ability to choose whether or not those alerts generate up here, or if those alerts generate through an email, or possibly both. But if we do have alerts turned on, this bell icon will light up. We'll be able to click into it and then action any sort of alerts that we have on our list. Another very useful part is this little eye icon here. So if I'm to hover over top of this, I have access to a large range of training materials as well as system information. So let's just say, for example, that I needed some information on time tracking. If I was to move up to this icon here, click on the training, I'll be taken to this training screen where I can go ahead and type in timesheets. And this will pull up a list of articles that we currently have in the library related to timesheets. So very useful parts to remember in the system. If you ever have any sort of questions, this is a great first contact point for you to get the answer. All right. One other piece, folks, for basic navigation that's always good to remember is that throughout your system, throughout your work, you'll notice there's a set of blue hyperlinks that generally appear on the top left side of your page. Now, these are known as the breadcrumb. So your breadcrumb is really there to help you navigate back and forth throughout the system as you start working deeper. So in this case, I know I'm in job 30373. The job is called Launch and Research. This is part of an overall project called 2018 Communications, and this is related to the company called Company A. If I needed to quickly get up to my project level, so I wanted to see all of the jobs that might be contained within that sort of larger project scope, I can just use this breadcrumb to click back to my project details, and then I'm taken to this overall project page, so I can see these three pieces that are linked together. Possibly I wanted to see everything that was happening with that specific company, not just the project. I can again use my breadcrumb to click back to the company level, and then I can get a full overview of everything that's happening within that company. And just to wrap that up, folks, if I needed to get back to that dashboard once again, I can just hit my logo on the top left side of the screen, and that's going to take me immediately back to this first dashboard that I have set. Now it looks like a few questions have come in. Thomas, do we have anybody in the queue with any sort of questions?
Hi, Sean. No, the questions are so far so good. They're mostly about the webinar itself, and not the dashboard or the elements of it.
All right, perfect. All right, folks. So that is our sort of basic navigation. Now, the next thing that would be good to cover here would be our dashboards. So if I'm just looking at this specific piece here, again, this classic view is showing me, quite basic information, but information that's going to be necessary for me to get my job done throughout the course of the day. Now, depending on the role that we work at within our company, there might be different things that we need to see here. So again, this specific dashboard, this is really set up for those people that are using the system on a day-to-day basis and are really actioning tasks or specific jobs. So this might be great for somebody who's working in a design department, possibly one of our animators, anybody that's working on deliverables that we're going to send out to our customers. Now, say for instance that I am acting as an account manager, and I need to get a specific view into how some of my clients are doing. We have the ability to customize these dashboards using a few preset options, or to completely customize them based on what it is that you need out of the system. Now, the example I'm going to choose here is BI Visuals. So this stands for Business Intelligence Visuals. If I go ahead and select this, you can see I've got a very different view from that classic piece. What this is showing me is an overall job summary. So how many jobs are currently open within the system? How many of them have a due date around today? And how many of those jobs are actually exceeding that delivery date? So jobs that we haven't closed out, but possibly have a delivery date. Well, let's just use January 31 as the example. Maybe I have a bunch of jobs that were due on January 31, but they're still open within function point. These are going to populate my late area. The same thing in this view, I can see which of my jobs are currently within budget. So jobs that I've put an estimated value against, and in terms of my actuals that I've tracked to it, we're still under that estimated value. Jobs that are within an 80% threshold. So these would be pieces that maybe I'd estimated $1,000 and my actuals are currently at 900. So I've got kind of a view into those jobs that could possibly go over. We might be able to finish them on budget, but at least this way the system is outlining what those pieces are. And then jobs that are considered over budget. So jobs that are exceeding that estimated value that I'd put on that job when I first built it. I have a jobs by company summary, which again is showing me specific companies that I'm taking a look at, the jobs that are currently within budget, and jobs that are over budget. I've got a timesheet summary here, which is giving me a view into time that is currently being tracked. If I'm a traffic manager, I've got a task and time summary down here, which is showing me all tasks in the system that are currently open, items that are currently due, and tasks that are currently late, and a nice little alert section here. Now, when we first show these to people, oftentimes we think, okay, well, this is what the dashboard is showing us. How much ability do I have to customize these? The majority of these visual dashboard folks, you'll have the ability to click into this little gear icon, and you can set specific criteria. So in this case, on my job summary, right now I'm viewing every job within the agency. Well, if I'm an account manager, that might not make sense to me. Maybe I just want to focus on jobs that I'm specifically the account executive on. In that case, I can set it to my jobs. Same thing with my percent budget. Maybe I want this orange area, my budget threshold, to be a little bit lower. Maybe I want to see all jobs that are within 60% of the budget. I can come back here and set that. And then I'm going to get a different view on this. This is only focusing on my work, and I've been able to set the criteria that I want to see. Now, same with this jobs by company summary. If I wanted to specifically outline clients that I want to pay attention to, I can just call up this gear icon. I can actually choose custom selection for my clients, and then I can pick and choose which clients I want to follow. The same thing, setting my percent or my budget threshold here. Now, if we did want to actually set one of these dashboards up in the system, it's quite simple. All we need to do is move up to our speedometer icon. We move down to where it says plus customized dashboards. And we actually have a walk along sort of setup here. So if I choose column number 1, select a layout, I'm going to move right to the bottom, and I'm going to hit plus new dashboard. So this is going to queue the system up to start creating a new dashboard for us. I'm going to follow step 2. So I'm going to decide to name this dashboard. If I would like to choose a template, I can. These are ones that are preloaded within your system. So if I was to choose quick view of everything, we can see that it's going to select a layout for us, and it's going to choose the tile content. If I wanted to do this completely from scratch, I wouldn't select a template. And what I do is take a look at the overall layout of the dashboard, and I'd pick and choose how much information I would like to see here. So if I just wanted, for instance, one large piece, that's my task and to-dos panel, I might select that. If I wanted lots of detail on my dashboard, I can move all the way over to the right side, and I can select this 6-pack option here, which is going to give me the ability to choose 6 different tiles. Now, ordinarily speaking, folks, what we usually see is that people will select a dashboard layout that usually includes sort of a large area for time tracking, and then they'll customize the rest of it with whatever sort of content they want to. Now, just because that's what people usually do, it doesn't mean you're stuck with that. You can really build these out however it is that you see fit. Now, the one that I'm going to build today is going to take into account our timesheets. I'm going to choose for my first small column, my alert section. For this second piece here, I'm actually going to choose recently viewed items. And for my bottom piece, I'm going to select my task and to-dos panel. Now, once I have my content chosen, I'm just going to hit the Save and Close button. And I'm going to marvel at the fact that nothing has changed on my screen. This is a very common question that we get from customers. When we save it, oftentimes we expect this to automatically change. It doesn't, and there is a very good reason for that. If I now move up to my speedometer icon, I can see my new dashboard is available. If I click into this, that will call up the view that I've currently set on that dashboard. The reason behind this, folks, is when we see people getting, I guess, very much into function points, or people using it very effectively, generally speaking, they don't just have one view that they're looking at. I'm sure you all know it just as well as we do. With agencies these days, people tend to wear multiple hats. So the system is designed in such a way that it will allow you to wear those multiple hats. Possibly in the morning when I come in, I might be acting as an account manager. So I have some specific accounts that I need to pay attention to. Well, my BI Visuals dashboard is going to help me keep track of that information. Maybe in the afternoon, I switch hats from more of an account manager, from an account manager to more of a designer. I can quickly come into my dashboard, select my classic view, and have the information that I need to work on for the remainder of my day. And maybe I just want to see what it is that I've currently been working on throughout the course of the day. I can again come up to the speedometer icon, select my new dashboard, and then I have a view of all the recent things that I've been looking at within the system. So again, folks, I can't drive this home enough. Those that are really successful in the system, they really do take advantage of these different dashboard views because there are going to be different things that you need to touch on throughout the course of the day. So please feel free to experiment with these. I promise you can't break anything, but it's a very useful part of the system. Okay, Thomas, how are we doing for questions? Has anything been coming through?
So far, so good. Just some filter questions, but they've been answered, and it's more specific to the user.
Okay, fantastic. All right, folks. So far we've covered some basic navigation within the system, and we have covered how to customize some different dashboards. Now, the third part that we wanted to touch on today was going to be how to track time. Now, this is a very, very important part of the system. Generally speaking, when people come to function points, they're doing so because they need a system in place that is going to help them manage their business. And by managing the business, what we really mean is we want people to be able to record what they're doing. We want to be able to resource their time out, and we want to have an accurate view into what's happening within our organization. Now, for those three things to happen, time tracking, it is essential. We need to know where people are spending their time if we're going to make informed decisions about where we can resource those people's time. So in order to do that, we do need to make sure that we are tracking time within the system. Now, to illustrate this, I'm actually going to go back to my classic view, just so I have a view into my jobs as well as my individual tasks. Now, a lot of organizations that we see, they might not have necessarily gotten into tracking time to tasks yet, and that's fine. We can track time just at the job level. So to illustrate this, what I'm going to do is quickly click into this job itself, this Pro Shop brochure. And I'm going to take a look at how this job is currently set up. So I can see for this Pro Shop brochure, I've got a generic production service group here with some different lines of service: design, production, coordination, and archiving. And I've got a printing piece. Now, with these internal service lines, I can see that I do have time that has been estimated for each one of these. And I can see time that has been tracked. Now, realistically, folks, as long as I have these service lines set up, I don't even necessarily need to have an estimated quantity piece, although it's always best practice to make sure we have something in here. But as long as I have these service lines available, I can track time in the system. Now, remembering that this was our job here, Pro Shop brochure, from my jobs panel on my classic dashboard view, I can click into this timesheet icon, and if I pay attention to the left side of the screen here, this is going to populate part of my timesheet for me. So I'm not having to remember what the job was called or what the job number was. So if I go ahead and select this, I can see this has automatically pulled the job through for me. Now, if I'm acting as a designer for the day, once I've selected this job, I'm going to choose my service dropdown, and I'm going to find what service I was working on throughout the course of the day. So I know I'm a designer. I can see I've got a design bucket. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I'm going to mark down how much time I actually spent on this today. Now this duration box, the time is broken down into 15-minute increments. We can get more granular than that, but what we generally see is that people use that 15-minute structure. So if I worked 15 minutes on this today, so a quarter of an hour, I'm going to go ahead and plug in 0.25. I can type in a description here. And I'm going to go ahead and select submit. Now I can see that this has recorded my time against this job, and I'm going to have a daily total that lets me know kind of where I've ended up at the end of the day. So if I was to track a little bit more time to this, maybe I was doing some actual production work here, and maybe I did an hour and a half. I can type in 1.5 for my duration. I can type in my description. And once I hit submit, I can see the total amount of time that I've logged for the course of the day. So far I put 1.75 hours into this specific job today. Now, sort of the next step for time tracking, folks, is to use this tasking area. So if we're currently tasking pieces out in the system, and what I mean by that is a more specific ask related to one of these pieces. So let me just back up here and move into this job to show you exactly what I mean. So for this design piece, for instance, maybe I wanted to get a little bit more specific about what I need Sophia to do on this piece today. If I actually set a task on this line, and I'll just do something quite generic here. Please design page 1, and I'll set this as due for today. I can now see that that task is populated here. So this, again, if we're using this method here, the jobs, we're still tracking time to that job. Using this task here, it's still assigned to that job, obviously, but we're getting a little bit more specific as to what we're asking people to do. Now, if this task had populated on my task and to-dos list, if I moved over and hit this status area, right now it's in an assigned status, so that means it's been pushed onto my plate. But as soon as I drop this into in progress, this is me telling the system that I am working on this. I'm actively working on this today. I'm just going to pop back to this for 1 second because I do want everyone to pay attention over to this left side of this panel here. As soon as I drop this from assigned to in progress, that again is going to populate my little timesheet icon. Now again, just as a quick review here, folks, if I was to hit this timesheet icon on this piece at the job level, I have to go through and select the service that I'm working on. If I'm to hit the timesheet icon at this task level, watch what happens on the left-hand side. This populates the majority of the timesheet for me. So it populates not only the job, it populates the service because we've already outlined that. It populates a specific task, and it even pulls through a description as to what was on that task. So if I needed to adjust this, I can then track my time for that designing. And if I go ahead and click select, again, we can see that this has now logged my time. Now, folks, those are two of the most basic ways that we track time within the system. And again, I can't stress this enough. Time tracking, it is a very important piece of function points. that's what's going to give you that insight into how your jobs are doing. If we have people that we've resourced things to, or if we have internal staff working on these jobs, we really do want them to be able to track their time. So those are two very quick ways to do it. Now, one thing that we do here, especially if we're coming from an older system where we didn't necessarily track time, this can be a little bit daunting for some people using these. So sometimes what we'll do is recommend that people use what's known as the weekly view. So right from this timesheet piece, if I click weekly view, this is going to take me to sort of a grid setup for my time tracking. Now I can see, because I've used a couple different services here, that these have populated my time for the day. Now, if I need to pull up a different job, let's go back to that test example that we used first. So let me just type in test here. Just by doing a partial search, that's going to pull up any job that has that search criteria in it. So in this case, I'd entered test. This is pulling up a job that is called test. Now, maybe I didn't know what the job was called. I just knew that it was for instance, company A. If I type in company A and click outside that box, this will show me those current jobs for company A. So I'm actually going to choose this testing one. I'm going to move over to my service dropdown, select what it was that I was working on. If I did have a task, this would be available to me here. If I didn't have a task on this service line, basically just nothing would populate here. And I can go ahead and then type in how long I worked on this today. So now that 2 hours has been recorded. If I'm to move back into function point, I can see that 2 hours has now been recorded on my personal timesheet panel here. Now, folks, I guess the two different use cases we see for this, if we are very much people that like to track our time as we go, you're certainly going to use one of these two options here. So either tracking through the job panel and using our timesheet icons, or tracking through the task and to-dos panel, and again, using our timesheet icons. If, and folks, I'm saying this very genuinely, if we're like me, and sometimes throughout the course of the week, I might forget to track a bit of time. I need to catch up near the end of the week. Probably the easiest way for me to do that is to use this weekly view. I can come into here and then I can bulk enter my time for the week. Now, is this a best practice to leave it to the end of the week? Absolutely not, but let's be realistic. Sometimes people will forget. So this is a nice tool to have at our disposal. If we can push more people towards tracking their time on a continual basis, it certainly makes life a little bit easier. So we get much more accurate information, but failing one of these two options, this timesheets by week is certainly a good tool for us. All right, folks, so that's sort of a rundown on timesheet basics, as well as some basic system navigation and some dashboard design. Now, really, that's what I had on the books for the agenda today, but I'd love to know if there's any sort of questions that have come up so far or anything that you'd like to possibly dive a little bit deeper into. So Thomas, how are we doing on those questions there?
So far, no new questions, so that's good news. I guess you're doing a really good job explaining it.
All right, fantastic. All right, folks. Now, I guess, Thomas, from your side, is there anything else that you think might be useful to show from the support side? I know I'm kind of answering things from a success point of view. Are there any sort of questions that come into support frequently around those three areas, navigation, dashboards, or time tracking, that you might want to dive into?
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe point out that the weekly view is only available for users that track time by duration. If you track time by start and end time, you won't have the weekly view available for you unless you switch to the duration model. Oh, I
That's
have
a
a few
great.
questions just popping in here.
Sure.
We're asking if we can go talk a little bit about task sharing.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. So task sharing, just a quick question for your question, I guess. By task sharing, do you mean passing the task from yourself to somebody else, or do we mean actually having a task in the system that's pushed out to multiple people? Would you be able to clarify that?
Passing tasks back and forth.
Back and forth, perfect. Okay. Folks, I'm gonna use this design piece as an example here. So let's say that I'm working on this design piece for the day. Now, I've got 16 hours that have been estimated on this. I've got an hour that's logged to this so far. So chances are I'm nowhere near complete, but I'm actually going on vacation. So I know that I'm not going to be able to finish this off by the end of the day or, for the next 2 or 3 days. If I need to push this to somebody else, depending on my permission set in the system, I can take this status here, drop this down to completed, and what I'm going to see here is a little checkbox that says, are you passing this task to somebody else? If I go ahead and select that, this is going to allow me to push this on to another user. Now in this case, I'm actually going to pass this to Sean. And I'm going to make sure that I throw in a comment here. Well, notice, guys, that the comment isn't a necessary field here. That's not required. However, if we are in the practice of passing tasks back and forth, I really would recommend that we use that. It's going to give us a really good starting point for the next person who's picking that up. Now, if I go ahead and select submit here, that's going to clear it from my screen here. And this is going to reassign that to Sean. Well, in this case, my initials aren't correct, but I can see if I've switched my filter from assigned to me to assigned by me, I can now see that task has been passed to the correct person. Now, if I wanted a bit of a history to see how many times this has been passed, if I actually click into that individual task, I actually have a past task history here. So I can see, as this thing has been passed back and forth, kind of what the overall history of that was. The same thing, I can see what the comments surrounding this task have been. So if we are in the practice of passing these tasks around, we really do want to make sure that we're filling in this comments field, because again, that's giving us a bit more background into, well, for lack of a better term, folks, the journey that this task has been on. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, folks. Thomas, was there anything else coming through around that, or anything else in general?
I'm just doing a question here about the hours tracked against the task and what will happen if you pass the task around, and where the hours are or who the hours belong to.
Okay. So, Thomas, did you want to field that in the webinar, or are we just going to field that as an email response?
I'll just reply to the user here on the webinar, but right now I would just like to say that the hours are all tracked against the task, is accumulated onto the task, but it's split between the staff members.
Perfect. So on this specific task, folks, we can see that we've got 16 hours allocated. If we had passed this around, this is going to keep track of how many hours get logged against this. And then once we start to exceed, what we'll see is that this starts turning red. So if I were to quickly track some time to this, just so you folks can see that as a visual example here. If I put 16 hours against this, I know we've already got 1 hour that has been logged here. Sorry, let me just readjust this here. Now, folks, I'm just reassigning this to myself, so just so we can see what happens when we start to go over the hours. There we go. Great, so if I do start to exceed those hours that have been estimated, I'm going to quickly see that, this task, we've gone above whatever that sort of budget was for that specific task. So great question. All right, folks, are there any other questions that we'd like to address today? Okay. All right, folks. Now, as Thomas had mentioned, with the weekly view, I think that's an important part to just touch on here. If we're in our system here and we don't have the ability to use this weekly view, this can be adjusted by your system administrator. So Thomas, do you want to actually just guide me through where we can make that adjustment to turn on this weekly view for people, should we need to?
Yes, so if you go to admin,
Perfect.
rate and staff management,
okay.
Staff rates and permissions. So there's two ways. There's a system-wide setting in the system preferences, but most of the time the personal account, I guess the personal staff account here overrides just whatever is set in the system preferences. So if you click into Sophia Wilson there,
okay,
you'll see that there is the work by duration that's checked. So that will give you the weekly view.
Perfect.
But if that's unchecked, then you'll default to the start and end time tracking.
Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. Okay. Now, Thomas, were there any other questions that have come up that we can address within this webinar, or will most of these just be questions that we reach out directly to the user?
These will be questions we reach out directly.
Okay, fantastic. All right, folks. Well, if that's the case, what we'll be doing here is making sure that everyone receives a copy of this webinar. As well, if you had an individual question that had come up and we didn't address it today, either because it's a bit too specific or it's something that needs a little bit more attention, you can rest assured that either the support team or your individual success manager will reach out to you with an answer for that. One other thing I really wanted to drive home was just don't be afraid to use that eye icon in the system. Again, that training site, that is, well, as long as the company's been around, there's articles in there that relate to the various parts. So that is a massive library. Generally speaking, you can find the answer that you're looking for there. That's not to say that you shouldn't reach out to the support of the success team. That's exactly what we're here for. But if you are looking for that information immediately in front of you, that eye icon is a fantastic place to start. And folks, if you did join late, we will be doing another one of these back to basics sections on March 21st. Okay, folks, so again, just stay tuned for answers to some of your individual questions. And again, you should be receiving a copy of this webinar relatively soon. Okay, folks, thank you so much for your time today. And we'll be in touch soon.